On the evening of August 22nd, 1962, a black sedan sped through a Paris suburb carrying the President of France when 12 armed men opened fire on it from the roadside. Over 100 rounds tore into the car, its tires were shredded, its rear window exploded into the back seat, and the president walked away without a scratch, in large part because the car itself refused to lose control. This is the story of the Citroen DS, the car so far ahead of its time that it may have saved a president's life almost by accident. The DS was developed almost entirely in secret, over 18 years, as the intended successor to Citroen's Traction Avant. The company brought together an unusual pairing to design it. Flaminio Bertoni, an Italian sculptor and stylist, shaped its body. André Lefebvre, a French aeronautical engineer, built its underlying technology. And what they produced together looked, by the standards of 1955, like it had arrived from another decade entirely. On October 5, 1955, Citroën unveiled the finished car at the Paris Motor Show. Most cars on the floor that year still had visible chrome grilles, tall greenhouses, and boxy upright proportions. The DS had none of that. It was long, low, and aerodynamic, with frameless door glass and a smooth, unbroken nose with no grille at all. Visitors reportedly signed 1,000 orders within the first hour. By the end of that single day, Citroën had taken 12,000 orders for a car most of those buyers had only just laid eyes on. But the styling wasn't even the real story. Under the skin, the DS ran almost its entire mechanical system, suspension, steering, brakes, and even its semi-automatic gear selection, off a single high-pressure hydraulic system. Its signature feature was a hydropneumatic suspension that used pressurized fluid and gas-filled spheres at each wheel instead of conventional springs. The car could automatically level itself no matter how it was loaded, adjust its ride height for rough roads or high-speed cruising, and absorb bumps with a smoothness journalists at the time compared to floating on a magic carpet. It also had power-assisted front disc brakes, genuinely rare on any car in 1955, let alone a mass-production sedan. The car's own name doubled as a pun. DS, spoken aloud in French, sounds almost exactly like déesse, the French word for goddess. It stuck immediately, and the DS became known across France simply as Le DS. Citroën sold nearly 1.5 million DS series cars over its 20-year production run, and it became, almost inevitably, the preferred car of the French political establishment, including the man who led the country through most of that era, President Charles de Gaulle. Which brings us to the evening of August 22, 1962. De Gaulle and his wife Yvonne were being driven from the Élysée Palace toward an airfield outside Paris, in a black DS-19, when their motorcade passed through the suburb of Petit Clamart. A group of far-right militants, members of a paramilitary organization opposed to de Gaulle's decision to grant Algeria independence, had positioned themselves along the route armed with automatic weapons. As the president's car passed, they opened fire. Accounts differ slightly on the exact numbers. Contemporary reports and later investigations put the total somewhere between 140 and nearly 200 rounds fired, with well over 100 shell casings recovered from the scene afterward. What's not in dispute is that the DS itself was hit repeatedly. Roughly a dozen bullet holes were later found in its bodywork. Its rear window was shattered completely. At least 2 of its tires were punctured outright. By any normal engineering standard of the era, a car with 2 blown tires, taking fire at speed, should have gone into an uncontrollable skid. The DS's hydropneumatic suspension, the same system built to smooth out potholes and keep the ride level, kept enough pressure and control at each wheel that the driver, a police officer named Francis Maroux, was able to keep the car stable, accelerate hard, and drive the president and his wife clear of the ambush entirely. Nobody inside the car was hit. One bystander outside the vehicle was injured in the crossfire, but there were no fatalities. De Gaulle, famously unshaken, is reported to have remarked afterward, quote, "This time it was close." The organizer of the plot was eventually captured, tried, and executed the following year, the last person in French history to be executed by firing squad. The DS wasn't designed with an assassination attempt in mind. Its engineers built the hydropneumatic system to solve a comfort problem, giving French drivers a smoother ride on the country's rougher rural roads. But on one evening in 1962, The same technology built to make a Sunday drive more pleasant turned out to be the difference between a president surviving an ambush and not. Production of the DS continued for another 13 years after that night, finally ending in 1975. Decades later, it's still regularly named among the most influential automotive designs of the 20th century. Not for any single moment, but the moment on that Paris suburb road in 1962 remains the clearest possible proof that the engineering underneath it was never just about comfort. Do you think the DS's suspension genuinely made the difference that night, or do you think de Gaulle would have survived the ambush in any well-built car of the era? Let me know what you think in the comments.